He's the Vice President of the Peace Officers Research Association of California, Damon Kurtz. Damon, welcome back on the show, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Now, Peace Officers Research Association of California. You're not sitting back in a back room just doing a bunch of research all the time. Explain what you guys do there.
So basically, PORAC is the acronym for that is a federation of associations. So we have the Fresno Police Officers Association here. You have Stockton has a police officers association. Sacramento has one, and so we're a conglomeration of those, and we come together as one voice in Sacramento or federally, and in the national voice. And we also provide benefits. We have a medical plan, we have a disability plan, we have a legal defense plan. It's there for us to come together and help each other out in those issues.
Different than you have a union, and then you have you guys as well. A little separation there, right?
Right.
Are there things you can do that unions don't do, and vice versa?
Well, yeah. I mean, so the union itself represents the organizations. Say Fresno, they do the negotiations and the contract negotiations, and they represent the officers here in Fresno on the working conditions that happen there. Where PORAC is a federation of those associations, and we're there to kind of provide assistance. And also be a voice in Sacramento and also at the national level, on top of the other benefits that we offer.
Damon, we got to ask. Let me ask your background. How did you become what you're doing now?
So I've been a police officer. I'm in my 26th year. I'm still a current Fresno police officer. I was the former president of the Fresno Police Officers Association, and I was also active in PORAC, if you will. I was chairman of their Insurance and Benefits Trust, and one thing led to another, and I was elected as vice president, which kind of oversees the state and membership and different issues.
What's morale like now? I know in 14 and 15 with Ferguson and the whole false narrative of hands up, don't shoot, morale dropped. But I remember then a lot of people honking and giving officers thumbs up and all. What's the morale been? What's been the reaction?
So morale's pretty low right now. It's similar to then. Very frustrating. You have the majority of officers out there are hardworking, ethical men and women that do their job every day the way they're supposed to do it. And we know mistakes happen, but it's less than 1% of a percent. I mean, it's a very small percentage that end up in a deadly force situation, and they're not always going to be perfect. But I think the unreasonable expectation of what our police is going to be. And I think our nation and our society has to decide what they want from our police officers. What do they want them to be?
Well, law and order is the majority. The minority is getting a whole lot of attention right now. There's a lot of people in those inner cities that were looted and rioted who are crying out for police protection right now. And then that Seattle zone, they were crying out for police protection. Isn't it staggering what we're seeing in front of us?
It's a little amazing, right? So you have folks who are crying for no police, and the idea that this is going to create some kind of utopia. But in their effort, I think they're going to create a dystopia, like these movies they make. It's kind of crazy to see what's going on right now. We were talking offline, and there was a shooting in West Fresno last week where a young lady was shot in the head, drive-by, sitting on her couch watching TV. And no one's upset about that. How is it no one's upset about this poor young lady who's now, got shot in the head? Yeah, if we had contacted those persons, we being the police, and stopped the shooting from happening, maybe a use of force ensued, there's a potential for more unrest. No one talks about the actions of the individuals that led up to the use of force. I'm okay with those officers being held accountable if their use of force is excessive or out of line, but let's not act like they just randomly selected somebody off the street and started using force on someone. There's a different narrative also, that if you don't fight, if you comply, things end up well.
The action that led up to the use of force, the actions. We see it. Fresno has high crime. You've seen it your whole career. There are actions. We've seen it. We read about it. We hear about this, and they know what's going on. In your opinion, was there a need for a police reform bill like the one that's being debated right now? The Democrats have blocked the Republican police reform bill.
So, look, I'm okay with reform. I'm okay with let's talk about how we can be better. We should always be looking how it can be better. I mean, if you look at when I started in 1994 to what we do now, there's been reform. It happens. It's called best practices, and it's an evolving profession. So reform sometimes takes on a bad word. Reform itself may not be a bad thing, but let's have the discussions on what's reasonable and not reasonable, and it should be based on, what an officer is expected to do, and they shouldn't be expected to die for their job. Although there's an idea that that's what we're supposed to do, but no one signs on for that.
The reality out there, if we went to a lot of these protests that we've seen peaceful ones and we've seen non-peaceful protests, but if you walked up to most people out there protesting that are against the police and ask them, what is the reality? How many unarmed black men are shot by the police in America in a year? I don't think most of them would answer correctly. I think it's under 20. I mean, it was in the teens.
Yeah, I don't have the current numbers, but I think 2018 numbers was less than 20, if I remember right. Yeah.
And even in those situations, we don't even know what the actual situation.
Right, and you're speaking on a national level. This is millions and millions upon contacts with law enforcement. This isn't a few hundred contacts that you had less than 20. It's less than 1% of all use of force of all incidents end up in use of force. It's very small. My
guest, Damon Kurtz, Vice President, Peace Officer Research Association of California, PORAC.
Correct.
PORAC. Mayor Libby Schaaf of Oakland told a bunch of Democratic mayors yesterday, they had a little Zoom call or something, that it was necessary not just to defund the police, but to replace the police. This is a mayor of one of the biggest cities in California, just replacing the police. We know that's not happening here. Yet, not happening here. What's your take on our local police reform action? It seems that the police, the NAACP, the city council, everybody seems to agree on this.
Yeah, I mean, you want to bring the stakeholders in. You want to have their opinions on things. Hopefully, we're having reasonable discussions. Do I think eliminating the police is the answer? I don't believe that at all. I think that eventually very quickly, that will probably end up badly. We have these conversations as if there isn't evil out there in the world, that we don't have child molesters, rapists, and killers. They're out there, and the only thing that holds them back is the good women and men of law enforcement that keeps them safe, keeps them from doing evil to everyone. So it's a little naive. I do think that maybe some of this conversations about giving more resources towards mental health and stop asking the police department to solve those issues, maybe that's a good thing. I don't think it's mutually exclusive that you have to defund the police to fund mental health services. I think it's a wraparound service. I think it's a teamwork type approach that's going to be ultimately fix that. It's majority of our calls have some form of mental health illness going on, whether it's substance abuse related or not. There's something going on there, and a lot of those are the ones that end up being use of force. Officers don't go to work every day hoping to have a use of force. It's quite the opposite. So if they can go, I've been a cop for almost 26 years. I did 14 years in patrol and different functions, and I've been lucky. I've never had to use my firearm in the line of duty, but it's been close a couple of times, and I'm thankful.
Have you pulled it out?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm thankful it never happened. But at the same time, I was always prepared. And I think every officer goes in with the same mindset. Like, they're prepared because they know that's what comes with the job, but the goal is to never do that. The goal is always to have a peaceful outcome.
Walk through it when you do have to take somebody down, not with a weapon, but you like in the Wendy's parking lot, those two officers with the man there with that fight that started and the tasers were pulled out and all that. So if you're like, hey, turn around, and then they start to resist and won't let you cuff them, how are you trained? What's the first move that you would do?
Well, typically you're trying to gain control, so it'd be some sort of a wrist lock, arm lock, whatever it may be, and it may end up going to the ground and try to gain control. But here's the reality: most of the time, that's not happening. I would say 99% of the time, I walk up to you, Trevor, and I tell you you're under arrest.
I do want to know the 1% though. Okay, if you can't get them handcuffed, you're fighting. You're fist to fist, or you're wrestling around. Taser, club, what are you trained to do first?
Well, it depends on the officer and what your training, your experience. It also depends on what your physical attributes are. Where do you feel comfortable? How do you train? Do you have additional training outside of law enforcement? What's your physical strength? What's the stature of the person? I mean, all these things go through your mind when you're going to put hands on somebody. Do you have another officer there to help you? all these things going through your mind, and that's going to dictate how that's going to go. And then it obviously doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go. And so if it starts to get out of hand because you're not able to physically overpower the person, maybe a taser is what you have and you use the taser. It's not always effective.
Now, in law enforcement, when you first started, did you have a taser then? Have you always had a taser your whole career?
No, of course not. No.
When did those?
Tasers are probably, mid 2000s, maybe early 2000s. The first version started coming out, but they weren't widely used through all of law enforcement. Particularly the smaller agencies didn't have them.
Now, also, body cams new. If I were an officer today, I would be like, even if I was sitting there drinking a cup of coffee, I'd have my body cam. Right? Can they keep them on constantly? Or?
They can. Obviously, you want to turn them off in certain situations, but, go in the restroom and such. But, our officers, they do rely upon them because they are basically there to say, hey, look, I'm doing my job the right way. It's interesting when these were enacted, there was this idea there where they were going to catch officers doing things wrong, and that's really not been the case. It's quite the opposite.
What was your take on the cancellation of live PD? That bummed me out big time. That was part of my weekend.
They were even talking about removing police Legos and everything else. I think
they did.
It's a little extreme to me. Our first responders are still heroes. They still will put their life on the line for you. Irregardless of where you come from and what you look like, they're going to be there to put themselves between danger and you. And that's a fact. And, politically it's popular right now. And we know that there's still support out there in the public. But what we need is that silent majority out there to kind of voice their opinions, to show up.
There it is. There it is. Say it again.
Let
your voice be heard.
Let your voice be heard. They're not civically involved, right? We're complacent in our lives. We go to work, come home, go to the grocery store, take our kids to school, pick them up, go to Little League, do whatever. But when it comes to time to be civically involved, are you showing up and voicing your opinion at your city hall? Are you voicing your opinion to your elected officials in Sacramento or in D.C.? Are you telling them that this is not okay? I mean, if you're okay with no police and you believe that that's going to end well for our society, then okay. But I don't believe that's the case. Overwhelmingly, most people are moderate in nature. We're not extreme in nature. We tend to be Republican or Democrat or wherever that may be. But the majority of us,
up until recently, it was law and order. We all agreed with. That's what we wanted.
But at most issues, we meander left or right. Even if you're a Republican, Democrat, we just kind of down the middle. But the extremists seem to end up in office. The silent majority has to get engaged at some point. It's more than just saying, hey, we support you and, on Facebook or, at your local Starbucks. We need you to show up and voice your opinions with our electeds because all they're hearing is the negative. And they think that all of America wants to get rid of police. And, I just think that's a bad idea. I think it's a naive concept.
Yeah, currently you would be told you're 189th in the Zoom call queue if you wanted to talk to City Hall. Well, City Council's on Zoom, right?
Yeah, right.
You'd have to
there is that.
Zoom in the room. Did you feel the earthquake earlier today?
I didn't. You got the alert and everybody's saying, yeah, it was a good shaker, but I was like, man, I didn't feel anything. It was weird.
I was at that time pulling in the car in the park. They say if you're in your car, you don't normally feel them, but everybody in the hallways here was talking about it, and I missed it. I wish I'd felt it. So that I could have been part of the whole talk, right? When you're not the guy that didn't feel it, you have nothing to say other than I didn't feel it, right?
Yeah, I've been around for some big ones, but for some reason I didn't feel that one.
Yeah. Well, it was for those that don't know, a 5.8 happened at 10:40 this morning, felt across the valley. It was over in Lone Pine, over there by Bishop. I went to high school in Ridgecrest. Lone Pine was somebody we'd play in baseball, and we'd have to go up there in March, and it would be like 41 degrees or 36 degrees playing baseball. Yeah. Are you a baseball fan?
I am a baseball fan.
Did you hear the news?
I heard.
They're back.
They're back.
Who's your team?
I'm an A's fan. So,
okay, I can get along with A's fans.
So it's good being here in the Valley and being an A's fan because that neither one of the Dodgers or the Giants fans seem to pick on you.
No,
right?
See my reaction. I'm a Dodger fan.
Right.
I was like, Ricky Henderson, the gang, Billy Ball, all of that. You had some good years.
But
you can always get a good seat at your favorite team's place,
right? But at the same time, if I had to lean one way or another, I'd go Dodgers. I went through a Dodgers phase in about my 7th, 8th grade year. That's when they had Steve Sachs and Garvey and. They had.
I have a framed Steve Sachs in my house.
So me and all my friends.
Garvey Lopes also say all that.
I became a Dodger fan for that period of time, and then I was, very conflicted when they played each other in the World Series. And
1988.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Mark McGwire, the Bash Brothers.
But eventually just came back to being an A's fan. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, now that we've had this conversation, my favorite American League team in the Bay Area is now the Oakland A's.
There you go.
Thank you, Damon Kurtz, Officer Damon Kurtz, Vice President, Peace Officers Research Association of California. Joe Biden tries to talk to a pre-recorded question from a lady. I'll let you hear it.
The Trevor Carey Show. Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400 and the iHeartRadio app.